Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video we're going to have Rep Paladin best trinkets for Season 4 of the Awakened season, and also what you should be looking to spend your Bullion on. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Bullion is how it looks like. And then, yeah, that's just basically the fancy new name for dinars from the Shadowlands Faded season. So we'll get started by talking about the trinkets, and then we'll kind of talk about the order and what you need to be looking for your focused items. Now, first of all, before we even get started, just to show you where I'm at here. If you don't know where the vendor is, he's actually way over here in the bronze section, in the biggest circle thing at the top of the stairs. Just left of the B in bronze and down. That's where these three vendors are, one for each season, right? So we have the latest season, Aberrant season, and then the Vault of Incarnate season, season 1. Let's go ahead and start talking about trinkets though. So we're going to talk single target first, and I'm going to give you a few options here. So single target meaning, you're going to be using these for raid, right? So you're going to be doing some sort of raiding if you're going to be using these trinkets. They're not as good in Mythic Plus, although the first two that I'm going to mention are also good in Mythic Plus if you can just never leave combat. So like Spiteful, or you're just in a group that's really good at just chain pulling and never leaving combat. But anyways, let's just go in order. Now, there's kind of a tie for first, but basically there's the anvil, pocket anvil, if you remember that trinket. Let's see where it is, right here, Elementum pocket anvil. If you remember that, this was a really, really good trinket. It's still really, really good. And then the one that it's kind of tied with is the Cataclysm Signet brand. I'd have to find it here right here. And so those are going to kind of be your top 1 and 2 for raid. Now, of course, the longer the raid fight, the better. If you're only doing normal, or you're in heroic but you're killing the bosses really fast, they do lose value, right? They have to get to a certain, basically like a 5-minute mark to really start gaining power. Anvil a little bit quicker, which is why I prefer Anvil a little bit more, but Signet brand kind of ramps up more at the very end than even Anvil does, but Anvil's a little bit better, maybe even after like the 4-minute mark. Just roundabout numbers there. So Anvil, Signet brand, really good for raid. Longer the fight, the better, obviously. Some other options for raid are going to be the Manic Grief Torch. If you remember that from Season 1, this obviously is going to get more value if you have somebody die, Manic Grief Torch, because it resets the cooldown or whatever. So it's actually better if your raid team dies a lot. And then Spiteful Storm as well, which did get nerfed. It was insanely good, and now it's pretty good. So any of these 4 trinkets are fine for raid. As far as Mythic Plus trinkets go, there aren't really any Mythic Plus trinkets that are great for single target. And if you are raiding, you're probably not going to be focusing on, like, if you're raiding, you're probably going to have access to raiding trinkets. And so probably the Blazebinder's Hoof from Ruby Life Pools is probably going to be like your best bet as far as a Mythic Plus trinket to use in single target. And again, I believe that's from Ruby Life Pools, Blazebinder's Hoof. So yeah, that would be your best bet there. But you kind of really want to focus on the actual raid trinkets for raid, and unfortunately some in a way for Mythic Plus as well, although there is some difference there. Speaking of which, when we're talking Mythic Plus specifically, right, could be a little bit different for like a console fight, the few console fights that there are, but specifically for Mythic Plus AoE trinkets, right, you really have 2 options. I threw a third one in, the one that I just mentioned actually, but you're really going to be looking for 2 trinkets here, and I suggest you look for these 2 for Mythic Plus, because you can target the items, right? With these 3 vendors, you can target the items. And so eventually you should try to get these. And number 1 is going to be Ashes of Embersoul. So that was a trinket from this last tier. Ashes of Embersoul, very, very good. It's the typical Mythic Plus thing, right? On-use trinkets, so you have something powerful at the beginning of each pack, right? That's going to really increase your damage. If you're not already doing that Mythic Plus, I mentioned this, I think, in every guide video I do when I get to the Mythic Plus stuff. But you really like to have on uses, unless there's just a passive trinket that is completely overpowered. It's really nice to have on uses. So Ashes of Embersoul, fully upgraded, is really, really good. And then the Iridius Fragment is also really, really good. It's the same principle. It's an on-use trinket. I don't know what this one looks like off the top of my head, the Iridius fragment, but it drops from Halls, I believe, off of like I think it might be the first boss there actually. But the Iridius fragment is also a very, very good on-use trinket. Sorry, I'm having trouble finding it, but I do promise it drops in there. I just saw it drop today. So that's another really good one. And now if you're really struggling, you get and you're trying to get a drop before you're using your Bullion or whatever, the Blazebinder's Hoof is also really good AoE, just like it is very good single target. It's a very nice all-purpose trinket. If you're looking for a trinket to hold you over until you get these top ones, the Blazebinder's Hoof is probably the way to go. Doesn't have that high end, but it has a very good floor on it. And so Blazebinder's Hoof is actually really, really good to hold you over until you get those things. Now let's talk about what we're going to use our Bullion on, right? So you get one this week. This is the first week. You're going to get more as this goes. So in theory, you might be able to just buy everything, right? I'm not exactly sure what the cap is or when you stop getting it, but you're going to be able to buy a lot of stuff, I believe, from what I've read. And so I'm going to give you basically your first 3 or 4 choices that you might want to go with in order. But yeah, so the number one thing you're going to want to do is talk to the bigger dragon here, and you're going to want to get the Scale of Awakening if you have the Legendary Axe, or if you plan on getting Legendary Axe or farming the Legendary Axe or whatever. If you have Fire Wrath or whatever, you're going to want to get this first. This is going to allow you to upgrade your axe. It's going to scale the damage up on it. It's going to scale, obviously, the weapon damage up on it. You want to do this, okay? This is going to be the number one thing if you have the axe. You want to get this. You want to farm it if you can. It's just by far the best thing you can do, right? So that should go without saying. It's off this vendor. You know, you'll be able to get it next week if you started this week, and you want to go ahead and get the Scale of Awakening to upgrade your axe there. And if you don't have the axe, you know, in my opinion, I think maybe you even hold out until you have 2 extra sitting around just in case you get the axe, right? You want to be able to buy that on command when you can, because otherwise you're going to be behind on your weapon because of that, or you're going to be in a position where you have like a heroic 2-hander that's like slightly better than the axe from last season or something, and you can't upgrade it or whatever. But just keep that in mind as your number one thing. The number 2 thing that I'm going to advise people to get, even though it does not provide quite as much value as the trinkets themselves, it's because it's very rare, right? We can target very rare items here, and that's the Seal of Durna's Chosen. You're going to be rolling against everybody for this finger. Fire damage has a chance. We're always doing fire damage now as paladins, and it has crit verse, which are very good stats for us, especially when our stats are already pretty much maxed out. You're going to want to probably get this next, and again, it's because it's very rare. You're rolling against everybody for it, and unless you get it naturally, of course, it is off the first boss, so you can say, well, maybe I'll get it naturally. But yeah, that'll be the next thing you want to target, just because it adds a ton of value. Basically the best value that's not a trinket, and yeah, it's also very rare. Whereas none of the trinkets that I mentioned, if you paid attention to the trinkets that I mentioned, none of those were like very rare trinkets that drop. Those are all normal drop trinkets. So Seal of Durna's Chosen I would go for next. Now the next thing I would go for is going to depend on your style, basically. If you are more into like defense, right? This also has good stats on it. The Ouroboros Necklet, right? This is just a good necklace with good stats on it for us, for Rep Paladins, against crit verse. And then it also is going to give you that little extra bit of Absorb Shield, right? Now, eventually, you might want to get the other thing that I'm going to mention too, right? But just, you know, for the third choice, you might have a tough decision to make. If all you care about is your damage, right? If you think back to Scale Commander Sarkareth, he dropped a very rare item, Voice of the Silent Star. And so this is going to do damage. Now you're also going to be stealing stats from your friends as well. But nevertheless, if all you care about is attack, this is another very rare item that you can target there. So I would, you know, depending on what you do, maybe you don't. I think there's probably a good amount of people that just say, well, I don't want to get Voice of the Silent Star because it has negative connotations. It doesn't have stamina on it. So let's say you do those other 3 first. If you want to get this one, you can. And then after that, that's when I would start filling in my trinkets, right? I would actually wait until I have at least like those 3 things. For me personally, you can skip the necklace because the added value of the necklace is a defensive proc. But then I would start filling in my trinkets after that. So you got Legendary Axe upgrade, Seal of Dearness chosen, necklace if you want the defense, cloak if you don't mind all the negatives with the cloak, and then fill in the trinkets. If you want to delete the cloak, delete necklace out of that list, that is more than fine for your character. And then you would just fill in your trinkets even quicker. So if you don't have the Legendary Axe, you might get Seal of Dearness chosen and just start filling in your trinkets until you get the Legendary Axe, right? That might be your play if you're someone that does not have Legendary Axe. But yeah, that's where I would go for this. The tier set. Again, I'm not doing a Rep Paladin guide for this because everything's mostly the same. Some of the stats on the gear are a little bit different, but there's enough stats, and secondaries are so bad for Rep Paladin right now in Dragonflight that we're going to be pretty much capped out on stats either way. They're all going to be pretty much equal to an extent. Now, if you have too much mastery, that's going to cause some issues. So you do want to stay away from that, and there are some very heavy mastery items. If you notice, I did not mention the defensive the ring off of Broodkeeper from Vault of Incarnates, Filial. So this is because this is a heavy mastery ring. If you have no mastery on any piece of gear and like you have like 10% mastery or something, then this would be a very good ring to slot into that to get you up to like this minimum amount of mastery that you might want to have. But other than that, it won't have as much value because it's just so heavy mastery with the really bad stat for us right now. That's why I didn't include that one, but it is there if you do want to go for that as well. So again, not doing a full guide. If you want to know about the rotation with this tier set, it's the same tier set as last season. So you would just look up the 10.2 Rep Paladin guide, and I will go in that video. I will go over the tier set, how it works, and kind of like what you want your priority to be on your moves and stuff like that. If you're super interested in that, it's not super hard. I'll give you TLDR. Make sure your Blade of Justice's dot is on your target, and Judgment every time you can, and that's how you're going to maximize your tier set bonus by getting the extra damage out of that. So that's kind of a TLDR on it. But that's basically what you're going to want to be doing there. So again, no full guide. Just wanted to give some gear updates. A lot of people asked for them and stuff like that. And while I'm not super hyped for this patch, I know other people are hyped just to collect all the cool items, right? You may not have a chance to get all these cool items all the time. And so I understand if some people are hyped for it. And I wanted to put this out there for those who are very interested in it. So that's it for this one, guys. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel because it helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.